Madam Web is a 2024 American superhero film featuring the Marvel Comics character of the same name. Produced by Columbia Pictures and Bonaventura Pictures in association with Marvel Entertainment and TSG Entertainment, and distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing, it is the fourth film in Sony's Spider-Man universe, SU. Directed by S.J. Clarkson from a screenplay she co-wrote with Claire Parker and the writing team of Matt Sazama and Burk Sharpless, it stars Dakota Johnson in the title role, alongside Sydney Sweeney, Isabela Merced, Celeste O'Connor, Tahar Rahim, Mike Epps, Emma Roberts, and Adam Scott. In the film, the origin story of Cassie Webb, Johnson, is explored as she confronts her past while trying to save three young women, Sweeney, Merced, O'Connor, from Ezekiel Sims, Rahim, who wants to kill them before they become Spider-Women in the future and kill him. Sony began development on a Madam Web film for its shared universe by September 2019, with Sazama and Sharpless writing the script. Clarkson joined as director in May 2020, in her feature film directorial debut, and Johnson was cast in early 2022. Additional castings, particularly for the Spider-Women characters, took place in the following months. Filming began in mid-July 2022 and wrapped before the end of the year, occurring throughout Massachusetts, including Boston, and in New York City and Mexico. Clarkson and Parker's involvement as writers was revealed in November 2023. Johan Söderqvist, a frequent collaborator of Clarkson's, composed the film's score. Madam Web premiered at the Regency Village Theater in Westwood, Los Angeles, on February 12, 2024, and was released in the United States on February 14. The film was panned by critics and grossed over $100 million worldwide against a production budget of $80 to $100 million. In 1973, in the jungles of Peru, a research team led by Ezekiel Sims and his pregnant colleague Constance Webb discovers an unidentified species of spider with rare healing properties. Ezekiel betrays the team and claims the spider for himself before leaving Constance for dead. An indigenous tribe attempts to save Constance, but she dies shortly after giving birth to Cassandra. 30 years later, Cassandra, going by Cassie, works as a paramedic in New York City alongside her co-workers Ben Parker and O'Neill. During a dangerous call, Cassie falls into the water and has a near-death experience. Ben revives her, but she begins to experience visions. Initially, she dismisses them as déjà vu, but after failing to prevent O'Neill's death, Cassie realizes that she can see into the future. Ezekiel, who has limited precognition power and enhanced physical abilities, collects information on three teenage girls, Julia Cornwall, Anya Corazon, and Maddie Franklin. His visions lead him to believe that they are destined to kill him. Cassie is also drawn to the same girls and intervenes to stop Ezekiel from ambushing them at Grand Central Terminal. She steals a taxi and takes Julia, Anya, and Maddie out of the city to hide them in a nearby forest. Cassie returns to her apartment and finds Constance's notes, which reveal Ezekiel's identity and the true nature of his powers. Ignoring Cassie's instructions, the girls go to a diner where Ezekiel finds them. After briefly incapacitating Ezekiel by ramming him with the car, Cassie takes the girls back to Queens and they take refuge in Ben's house. Cassie flies to Peru and tracks down the tribal chief who saved her mother. The chief puts Cassie through a ritual that separates her soul from her body. She experiences a plane of higher consciousness where all living things are connected and where every possible future can be seen. She learns that Constance sought the spider not for fame or money, as she had originally thought, but to save her from having the same fatal hereditary disease that Constance suffered from. Ben's pregnant sister-in-law Mary goes into labor earlier than expected and he takes her to the hospital, along with the girls, who are seen on camera when in the car. Ezekiel intercepts them again, but Cassie rescues the girls in an ambulance and distracts Ezekiel so Ben and Mary can escape. The group lures Ezekiel to a condemned firework factory and sets up traps to disorient him while Cassie calls for a medical evacuation helicopter to fly to their location. Ezekiel destroys the helicopter and separates the girls, then taunts Cassie with Constance's death. Cassie uses her powers to guide the girls to safety. She sets off the final trap, which fatally crushes Ezekiel. An ignited firework strikes Cassie in the face, blinding her. Cassie is taken to the hospital just as Mary gives birth to her son. Cassie wakes up to discover that she is now blind and paraplegic due to her injuries. However, her clairvoyance enables her to see fully into the future. Cassie assures the girls that she will mentor them in their future roles when the time comes. A paramedic in Manhattan who, after an accident, develops psychic abilities as a clairvoyant which allow her to see future events within the spider world, and is a reluctant hero. 10, 11, 12, 13 In the film, Cassie is depicted as an inexperienced clairvoyant in her 30s learning her new powers, in contrast to the comic book version which is a blind and paralyzed elderly woman connected to a life support system and a fully fledged clairvoyant. Johnson and director S.J. Clarkson sought to differentiate the film's portrayal from this version while embracing the character traits from the comics. 11-14 Johnson felt Cassie's wit, humor, and abrasiveness were balanced with her compassion, particularly through her forming a sort of family with the three young women after not getting along through the film's events. 14 Which stemmed from Cassie being on an unending, insatiable quest to save people after she was unable to save her mother. 13 She was interested in playing a female character whose superpowers stem from her mind, and by the prospect of seeing into the future while understanding the character's past and present, while Clarkson was inspired by the psychological and cerebral aspects of the character, with Cassie questioning her sanity which she battles within herself and attempts to understand. Clarkson called Cassie a loner and described her as somewhat abrasive, quirky, and on the outer edges of things, which she compared to the title character of the Marvel television series Jessica Jones, 2015-2019. After their work on the Marvel Comics-based film Morbius, 2022, part of Sony's Spider-Man universe, Sony Pictures hired Matt Sazama and Burk Sharpless in September 2019 to write a script centered on the Marvel character Madam Web. Sony's executive vice president Pulak Patel was overseeing the project. Karam Sangha had previously written a draft for the film. In May 2020, S.J. Clarkson was hired to develop and direct Sony's first female-centric Marvel film, which was reported to be Madam Web. The studio was looking to attach a prominent actress such as Charlize Theron or Amy Adams to the project, before hiring a new writer to further develop the film with her in mind. 30 After meeting with several A-listers for the title role, Sony narrowed their shortlist during December 2021 and January 2022. Dakota Johnson became the frontrunner by the end of 2021, and was in talks to star as Madam Web by early February. Clarkson was confirmed to be directing Madam Web at that time. Sydney Sweeney joined the cast in March 2022, alongside Johnson. Justin Kroll of Deadline Hollywood described the project as being Sony's version of Doctor Strange due to Madam Web's comic book abilities, though he noted that the film could be departing from the source material since the comics version of Madam Web is an elderly woman, named Cassandra Webb, connected to a life support system that looks like a spider web. Kroll noted because of this that the film reportedly could turn into something else. Grant Hermans of Screen Rant noted speculation on whether Johnson was playing Cassandra Webb or the younger Julia Carpenter, who was the second character in the comics to be known as Madam Web. A month later, Sony gave Madam Web a release date of July 7, 2023, and confirmed Johnson and Sweeney would star in the film. Lorenzo de Bonaventura, who produced the film for Sony through his production company de Bonaventura Pictures, described the film as a thriller and called the titular character's clairvoyance a tricky skill set that was not likely to be used for an action film. 35 With Sweeney believing this approach would differentiate the film from audiences' expectations of other superhero films. 36 De Bonaventura explained that Sony decided not to reveal many details about the film ahead of its release, because the Madam Web character was not well known to general audience. Sony Pictures CEO and Chairman Tom Rothman said in May 2022 that filming would begin in the spring. 37 While Celeste O'Connor joined the cast. 12 This was followed by the castings of Isabela Merced, Tahar Rahim, and Emma Roberts throughout the following month. 38 39 40 Responding to these castings, Sabina Graves of Gizmodo opined that many of the actresses could be playing more recognizable characters from the Spider-Man comics, such as the Spider-Women versions of Jessica Drew and Gwen Stacy, in the film as a reimagining of the Spider-Verse crossover comic book. Sweeney and Johnson were preparing for their roles by then, when filming was scheduled to begin in mid-July. Sweeney completed an athletic assessment test and read comics featuring her character, Julia Carpenter, while Johnson underwent training. During the casting process, Deadline Hollywood described Madam Web as an origin story for the titular character. Sony later described the film as a standalone origin story and a suspense-driven thriller that diverged from the typical superhero film genre. 46 While Bonaventura said it would present a fresh take on the character and her origin. Clarkson sought to incorporate a female-led and grounded and gritty tone similar to her work on the Marvel television series Jessica Jones, 2015 to 2019, and said she was given creative freedom in making the film. Clarkson described the center of the story revolving around Cassie's mother. The film was set in 2003 since the initial scripts, with Clarkson choosing to provide a timeless quality to the film by including music from the 1990s and On the Edge of 2003 and featuring vintage clothing. She opted to avoid a post-credits sequence as she felt she said everything we needed to say. The script had undergone substantial changes throughout production. Johnson felt it was important to depict Cassie in a grounded and human reality that audiences could relate to, compared to other superhero films. Sweeney's role was reported in March 2023 as Julia Carpenter, which was confirmed in May along with Johnson as Cassandra Webb. Sweeney's character was ultimately named Julia Cornwall. In July, the film's release was moved forward slightly to February 14, 2024. 68 The first trailer, released in November 2023, revealed that Merced, O'Connor, and Rahim were respectively portraying Anya Corazon, Maddie Franklin, and Ezekiel Sims. The characters of Carpenter, Corazon, and Franklin were noted for appearing in their Spider-Woman costumes from the comics 17. Spider-Man comic book writer and Sims's co-creator J. Michael Straczynski said while Sims was the same character he created, he felt the film's interpretation combined elements from Morlun, another Spider-Man villain he co-created in the comics who is associated with the multiverse and the Spider-Verse. Emily Garbutt at Total Film noted that the film's version of Sims could see into the future, compared to the comics' version who is a rich businessman who gained similar powers as the character Spider-Man through a ritual, and noted that Morlun could drain the life force of others through physical contact. At that time, the film's final writing credits were also revealed. Sazama and Sharpless received credit for the screenplay alongside the writing team of Claire Parker and Clarkson, while credit for the story was attributed to Sanga, Sazama, and Sharpless, with off-screen additional literary credit given to Chris Bremner. An official premise for the film release then began with the line "Meanwhile, in another universe." This wording had previously been used in a trailer for Sony's animated film Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, 2018, that was attached to the end of their Sue film Venom, 2018. Clarkson later said the Madam Web character existed in a standalone world. Journalist Jeff Snyder reported in January 2024 that Sony had performed reshoots for Madam Web to remove references to an originally planned 1990s setting of the film. Snyder explained that this original time period was intended to allow for the version of Peter Parker/Spider-Man played by Andrew Garfield in the Amazing Spider-Man films, 2012-14, exist within the film's continuity, but noted that the character was not planned to appear. Snyder further reported that after Sony decided to instead plan for the version of the character played by Tom Holland in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, Spider-Man films, 2017-2021, exist within this film's continuity, this timeline needed to be adjusted to align with that character's age, with the film ultimately set in 2003. Snyder also reported that there was potential for the different Spider-Women characters to appear in costume for a single scene in the film, and he believed that younger versions of the Spider-Man characters Mary and Ben Parker would also appear. Ahead of the film's release, Clarkson confirmed in early February that those characters were respectively portrayed by Roberts and Scott. Mary Parker is pregnant in the film, which features an infant version of Peter Parker appear at the end, played by an uncredited infant. Lee Folsom Boyd edited the film after previously doing so on No Way Home. Visual effects were provided by Digital Domain, Balo FX, One of Us, and Outpost VFX.